Bo Shao is the chairman and co-founder of Evolve Ventures, and he's a very successful venture investor with a track record of identifying opportunities, and also helped start one of the most successful capital firms in China. He's also a good friend of mine and has been very active in kind of launching what we might call conscious investing or evolution investing or mindful investing. Bo, welcome.
Nice to be here. Hi, Soren.
Hi. So I thought we'd start just by talking about a number of years ago, you were on stage at Wisdom 2.0, and I think Evolve Ventures, Evolve Foundation too, were also just beginning to be birthed into the world. Can you tell us a little bit about your vision for this company, for this effort?
Well, what we do is we do both venture investing as well as grants from the foundation. So it's Evolve Ventures and Foundation. And for us, we actually, what we care about is the impact. And to the extent organization is for profit, that's great. But if they cannot make it a sustainable organization, nonprofit is fine too. And the overall objective is what we call evolution of consciousness, but there are different ways of calling it. It could be mental health, could be personal growth, could be spirituality even in some cases. And our belief is that, if we want to make a positive impact on the world, we need to start from the inside. We need to understand ourselves better. We need to know who we really are. And then from that place, we can create companies and also make other kinds of impact on the world in a much more sustainable and positive way.
Right. And I know your background is more on the traditional investment side, both in China and the US, I think particularly in China. Was there a moment or was it a gradual shift to all of a sudden realize, you know what, I don't think that's my karma this lifetime. I got something else to do. What was there a certain experience you had that guided you, or is it your wife telling you to do something, or how did that happen?
She does tell me to do a lot of things, and I always listen. In this particular case, I think I've been on a personal journey for about 10 years, and I've benefited enormously from meditation, mindfulness, different kinds of therapy, and also different kinds of spiritual teaching. And I've seen my life change, and I've seen my relationship with other people change, and I've seen sort of my understanding of what the world needs, how I can help change as well. But all these changes sort of stayed on the sort of personal inside part. But then the external thing I was doing was still running a venture capital firm. We at one point, we quickly got to several $1 billion and all that, and making lots of interesting investments in China. But I think about 3 years ago, I realized, it was not a one-time realization, but over the course of several months, I realized that, these two things are really disjointed, that I was making investments in companies that in some cases are irrelevant in my view now, looking at what they do. And in some cases are in a new world view is potentially doing harm in the world. And since I'm managing other people's money, it's hard to make those changes, and I'll have other partners and all that, and it's a large firm now by then. So I decided to stop that pure commercial activity and apply my skills and resources in a way that's aligned with my beliefs and also my inner journey now.
Yeah. And I know, because we live in the same kind of area in the Bay Area, there's not a lot of Evolve venture capital companies. How has your response been to other people who are involved in more traditional investing? Do they look at you as an oddity, or how's that reception been in the communication? Like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to do this evolution of consciousness thing. How's that been?
Well, surprisingly, the reception has been really warm. In fact, when I left, my firm, and I sort of posted a goodbye note to basically the 400 or 500 CEOs that our fund has invested in, and that like a one paragraph note got forwarded several million times in China. And people really resonated with the direction I set myself upon. And became sort of a topic of conversation in the sort of the whole tech investing space in China for a few days, which really surprised me, totally taken me by surprise. And in the US, I think, so in China it was very rare, but however, it was really quite, the reception is quite surprising, which means that the people deep inside all really resonate with the inside, even though professionally they might not have been able to do anything about it. And in the US, similarly, I think most people in the venture circle that I interact with, but me also there's a subset, I don't interact with everybody. And we have worked together on some deals, but so there hasn't been as much sort of real substantive engagement. But in terms of people's I think this is really there's the outside resume, LinkedIn kind of part of themselves, but there's also this inside part of themselves. And I think what Evolve does really resonates with everybody's inside part of themselves.
Right. And so as you've kind of opened up that door, like, okay, we're going to do investing for profit and nonprofit that supports the evolution of consciousness. What do you think, where do you see areas where, wow, we have a lot of growth and a lot of movement, and what are the areas where you see, wow, we haven't really addressed this at all, and this is a big area that needs attention? So how would you assess the field, I guess, is the question.
It's a good question. I think my sense is there's a general sort of cascading of interest. So I think what's clearly in the mainstream is anything to do with the hardware, our brain, understanding our neurobiology, research and then research-derived kind of companies. That has always been covered by traditional, VC in some ways, even though they haven't been not a great companies have emerged, but that's always been a mainstream interest. And then you're moving into mental health, and that area is also attracting a lot of attention now. Pear and the many other companies that have done very well. And I think the whole mental health space, particularly during COVID, has attracted a lot of attention. What hasn't attracted attention, I would say there are two things that are related. One is sort of how does one go deeper? Beyond meditation, beyond mindfulness, which is great for stress reduction and et cetera, for mental health, how can one sort of go deeper with one's process for a different level of joy and a peace, and also understanding that we actually really not alone in this universe. We're not some separate entity enclosed in this body of bone and skin, trying to make the most out of, make the most for ourselves and make the most for our family. There's a lot bigger game afoot that sometimes we actually lose sight of. And it's hard to go in further without talking about spiritual language, even though I'm not a religious person, but I find myself often stray into words such as love and non-dual, etc.
Those are welcome here. You can use those words here.
That's right. And another one that I think that we pay a lot of attention to is really the founder and the CEO's own personal process. And what we have discovered is that unless the founders themselves are on a continuous journey of inquiry and self-discovery, they very easily can get pulled away from the mission by power, by stress, by need to raise another round of financing, by meeting certain KPIs that the board sets, etc. And these KPIs are certainly important, but I think it's really important it's really difficult and important for entrepreneurs to remain on mission.
Yeah.
And we seem seeing all sorts of companies that makes great slogans, and some of these slogans might have even been believed in the beginning of the company, but over time, for example, Facebook's connecting people, right? I mean, that sounds great, but does the team and entrepreneur take the time to introspect? Starting with introspection and then going to, I guess, extrospection or something. But it's the sort of examining of the world is not complete and will not be accurate without the time spent examining oneself.
Yeah. And do you think that that can work within a for-profit model? So for example, we want you to know yourself, we want you to do the right thing, we want you to have a spiritual understanding, and we want you to make money. that those all can be encompassed into a space, or inevitably, I'm guessing you do, but some people argue that inevitably is going to create some conflict, because what's better for the world might not be what increases value. And so
I certainly hope that we as humanity, as society, will figure this one out. I think in some cases, profit motives can be aligned with motive to do good. Particularly 130 years, term focus next quarter or the shorter term focus there is, the less alignment there is. However, there are cases where clearly there will be a trade-off. And my view is that perhaps our definition of a corporation will need to change. Today, it's all about shareholder value, right? But that's something that's very new. We take it as almost gospel, but really this is only 50, 100 years old. Prior to that, there was no such thing, stakeholders, and companies need to serve customers, they serve employees, it's really about the sort of the extreme, I guess you call it externalization of a company's purpose has driven us to where we are. So it's not easy to change, though we have certainly seen some changes, like certain large institutional asset allocators, start a couple of years ago, start talking about stakeholders, not just shareholder value. So that's changing slowly, but it's starting to change. But also perhaps there will be new forms of human organization, potentially enabled by blockchain. One of the things I'm really interested in is the model of co-op, such as Mondragon in Spain. But those have not been very prevalent because it's very difficult. It's very logistically difficult and expensive and complex to implement. But blockchain actually could be a great way to organize a new kind of co-op that would completely change the incentive structure, that would be aligned with the more impact-driven goals that I believe in.
Wow, cool. There's a lot to go there. So, because I also know that the blockchain and crypto is very interesting to you, and also so is kind of trauma and the whole realm of that. So how do you find yourself kind of deciding where your investments are in the consciousness dimension? So for example, healing trauma, psychedelics, there's a lot of movement that's happening in there. How do you kind of define, this is a consciousness, this fits the consciousness, evolution of consciousness? Is it more an intuitive thing for you? Or is it like, that would be kind of cool for the world, but not really my sweet spot? Or is it instinctual if it fits the consciousness unfolding? Or do you have kind of like a set theory? It has to be these three things in order for it to work.
I definitely don't have a grand plan and can only contribute my small part and our small part in this whole, joint effort. And I think we do break down our mission into a few categories, and we've seen some of these, actually about 6 categories. I won't go through them all. And some categories will be easy to go to a for-profit model. In some categories will be much harder to go to a for-profit model. So for example, in the area of, we have something called the deepest expression of light, which is teachers and schools that really bring out the depths in learning, in self-discovery and spirituality. Those schools are almost always nonprofit, and we give grants to those schools and these teachers who often might not necessarily know how to raise money even, or to run a large business organization. And we try to help as well on the business front. But however, also there is the area, for example, we're building platforms for spreading light. That's where the scale matters, and depth perhaps takes second seat to scale. And in those cases, for example, Insight Timer, meditation app, and other meditation we have invested in China, platforms for distributing social emotional learning. Those areas that could be for profit for sure. And then there are also areas, for example, psychedelics, where you actually probably need for-profit organizations to raise the massive amount of capital that's needed. However, for-profit motivations could distort some of the very important mission objectives of the whole movement.
Yeah.
And in those areas, we're trying to figure out how to do it. And one of the ways we have pledged ourselves to is we will make investments into these nonprofit companies, but all of our investments will be held by our nonprofit arm.
Okay. So any profit that comes from that will go back to the nonprofit.
That's right. So that keeps our motivation pure. And also then we can play a role in the board and the investor groups that would help sort of be hopefully a good example of how stewardship can be done, but at the same time support a for-profit organization that can then use equity to recruit the right people and motivate the right people. And I think that's probably the best way to build scalable and disciplined organizations at the same space, at the same time retaining a mission focus.
Cool. There's a bunch of questions coming from chat, but I'll just grab one from Dr. Ed Nab. He says, how can blockchain help to facilitate a more mindful organization? I think that's a whole book or lecture or talk right there, but do you want to touch briefly on that?
Yeah, my answer is
blockchain and mindfulness have not been in the same conversation for a while, so I'm glad we can.
I don't know, honestly. I think it's more the ethos of blockchain of a flat organization where everybody has a vote, and organizations where impact can be tracked more easily through blockchain. So there are a lot of things that blockchain can do that will create that sort of the foundation for us to pay attention. But the paying attention itself, the act, so far what I know is we still have to still have to set aside the time ourselves to do it. So that's my answer, but probably not a very satisfactory one.
We'll have to figure that out. And I'm curious, so Bo, I know you're involved in numerous for-profit, nonprofit endeavors. And like, at the end of the day, like, for me, I'm always like, we have limited heartbeats, one, and we never know when those heartbeats will end, right? So that we live in this world of knowing that there's limited heartbeats and knowing that we never know how many heartbeats we have left. And so, like, I'm wondering, like, if you think of yourself, all right, I'm on my deathbed, or like, this was my life. How do you assess how to spend those heartbeats in a way that you feel like will matter then? And do you feel like you're doing that now, or do you continually reassess every certain month or 2 months or a year of like, all right, is my heartbeats here kind of true to the karmic path that I seem to have come here for? Or are there any adjustments I need to make based on really being of greatest service to the world?
Yeah, I do ask myself the question quite often, is if I were to die tomorrow, I have to die in a week, am I doing what I really want to do? And I think in the recent year or two, the answer has been pretty consistently is yes, the direction is right, but I should have less fear. And fear could be fear of not being understood. Fear could be fear, I could make a bad investment if I do things too quickly. Right, fear. And I think that I think I could think bigger. And I could think bigger in terms of capital, in terms of people, in terms of the size of projects. I'm in this incredibly fortunate place where I don't need to, make a living right now. Like, I could deploy the resources in a way that's good, and I can put my creativity to work. And it's just, I'm so appreciative of what I have been gifted with. I feel kind of responsibility to and do things. And the short answer is I feel like I am aligned, but I think it's always good to assess. I think, however, the assessment I felt like I need to do more often is more like, am I taken away by my ego? Like, oh, I am doing this. Look at how great I am, kind of thing. And that's, and I think it does, I think I admit my ego is still there.
Mhm.
And actually I had a conversation with my good friend and teacher Jack Cornfield, and I feel like I need to feed my ego occasionally. It's like a little pet that needs to be fed, but
Mhm.
it needs to be separate from me. And I'm very aware that my ego is here and that needs to be fed. But having that awareness
Mhm.
and examination is really important for me.
Mhm. Jack's coming on actually, I think in a few minutes, so we can
Oh,
ask him
great.
about
Say
that.
hello to him
Yeah.
for me.
And so the understanding, if I understand it right, was the egoic patterns, we can kind of maybe feed them less and less over time, but we can't just maybe, at least from your perspective, get rid of all self-oriented tendencies, but we can be more mindful of when we do.
And I have no ego now. Service and no ego. Maybe there are a few people in the world like that. I've yet to meet them, they certainly will be saints. And I'm not a saint.
Right.
And another thing also I want to spend a lot of time on is spending time with my kids. I'm a human being. Spending my time with my kids, seeing them grow up well is really, really, really meaningful to me. And I want to, spend a lot of my time doing that.
Great. Yeah, there was a question that came in, I think somewhat related to that, that says, how do we make the metaverse more human? I'm trying to see if I can see it. And I think that there's this place of human contact, right? Whether it's kids or other people. Do you have any thoughts on this vast metaverse digital world we're entering and how to keep the human connection alive and strong, and making sure parents like yourself and others don't forget that there's these amazing creatures called kids around them?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a whole hour conversation. I think, I think first of all, I think any technology medium that will facilitate a more higher bandwidth, richer interaction, I think is better than a text-based. If you think about Facebook and other social media, it's an asynchronous broadcast kind of a media, which is very different if you think about it from a normal human interaction, right? There's also very little sort of public square you can go to and you meet all sorts of people that you normally would not interact with, right? So it's very not real in some sense. So to the extent that metaverses can create sort of forums and other ways of enable people to interact in a much richer way across time and in bandwidth, look at facial expressions and all those other things that comes with natural human needs, I think will lead to less misunderstanding and less silos and echo chambers. So I think that's really good. But however, I cannot possibly foresee where the benefits are and the risks are of this whole. It's where the really infant stages. And then to me, the most important, if I were to be involved in this space, is the founder, is the team actively engaged in individual self-work on themselves?
Yeah.
That's probably is the best insurance that we can buy, and they can buy themselves to ensure that this will end up doing good things for the world. And I think the potential is huge.
That's great. That's great. We just have a minute or two. Bo, anything we did not talk about that seems on your heart and on your mind and that you want to share?
Well, I see a lot of questions in the chat box, which I cannot get to, which is, I feel sort of sadness that I would love to connect with so many people in the audience. And I think I guess I've been saying this before, but I'm just summarizing. Like for me, everything starts with our understanding of ourselves. So so whether we're investor, entrepreneur, user, whatever it is, or just average person not doing something in the entrepreneurial space or spiritual space, I think just doing the work to, whether it's meditation or whatever, people are suitable for different kinds of work. But just understanding who we are is really the foundation of everything.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. I have and the signature on my email is a quote from Rumi, And he says, work in the inner world just as hard as you work in the outer world. And I put it there to remind me. It's not to remind other people.
Yeah, I think it's harder.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure. Maybe we'll do another one. We'll have more time and we can do a Q&A with you at a different event when we can get to all these questions that were emerging in the chat. And apologies for everybody for those we couldn't get to, but thank you so much for joining.
People can find out more about on the website as well, on our website.
So they just Google Evolve Ventures.
Evolve VF. Evolve VF. V stands for venture. F stands for foundations. EvolveVF.com.
Right. Wonderful. All right, Bo.
All right.
See you soon. Thanks again.
Thank you.